The sun was beginning to sink low on the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink as three young boys, Jamie, Ben, and Toby, wandered deeper into the Australian bush. The trio had grown up in the small town of Coober Pedy, where the outback was more than just their backyard, it was their playground. They'd spent countless afternoons exploring the dusty plains and rugged scrubland, but this time they'd ventured farther than they ever had before. And now, as the shadows lengthened and the air grew cooler, they realized they were lost. Jamie, the oldest at 14, was the first to speak up, his voice wavering slightly as he tried to mask his worry. We should have turned back by now. The sun's setting, we need to figure out where we are. Ben, 2 years younger, brushed off his concerns with a shrug. We'll be fine. Just a bit more, and we'll find that old creek bed Dad talked about. It's got to be around here somewhere. Toby, the youngest at 11, said nothing. His wide eyes scanned the scrub, the low-growing mulga trees casting eerie shadows over the dry ground. He tightened his grip on the small pocket knife he always carried, a gift from his grandfather. They had no map, no GPS, just the rough directions Ben's dad had given them that morning when they'd set out. Follow the ridge, he'd said. You'll find the creek that way. Just don't stray too far. But stray they had. The heat of the day had evaporated, replaced by a biting chill. The boys walked in silence, their footsteps crunching over the dry soil. The bush was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures stirring, the chirp of crickets, the distant hoot of an owl. Jamie stopped abruptly. I think we're going in circles, he said, staring at a rock formation that looked suspiciously familiar. He turned to Ben, his tone sharper now. You sure you know where we're going? Ben's bravado faltered. I thought I did, he muttered. It's easy to get turned around out here. Toby, who had been silent the entire time, finally spoke up. I don't like this. What if we can't find our way back? Jamie put a reassuring hand on Toby's shoulder, though he wasn't feeling all that confident himself. He glanced up at the sky. Clouds had rolled in, obscuring the stars. Without the sun or stars to guide them, they had no sense of direction. Let's stop for the night, Jamie suggested. We'll make camp here and figure things out in the morning. The boys gathered dry twigs and branches, starting a small fire to ward off the cold. They sat around it, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames, casting long shadows across the barren ground. We'll be fine, Jamie said, more to reassure himself than anyone else. We just have to stay put and not panic. But inside, he was panicking. They had no food, no water, and no idea how far they were from home. The outback was unforgiving, even for those who knew it well. It was easy to get lost, and even easier to get hurt. The thought of snakes, dingoes, and the blistering heat of the next day sent a shiver down his spine. Ben poked at the fire with a stick, his earlier confidence completely gone. I should have listened to Dad. He told us not to go too far. Toby pulled his knees to his chest, staring into the fire, his mind racing. He remembered stories his grandfather had told him, tales of bushmen who had wandered into the wild and never returned, of mysterious disappearances that were never solved. He didn't want to end up like one of those stories. The night wore on, and the boys huddled closer to the fire for warmth. Sleep came in fits and starts, interrupted by the unfamiliar sounds of the bush, rustling in the bushes, distant howls, and the constant buzz of insects. In the early hours of the morning, Jamie woke with a start. The fire had burned low, and a faint rustling sound reached his ears. He strained to listen, his heart racing. There it was again, something moving in the scrub nearby. He nudged Ben and Toby awake, whispering urgently, "Do you hear that?" The boys sat up, straining to see beyond the glow of the dying fire. The sound grew louder, branches snapping, the unmistakable sound of something large moving toward them. Ben grabbed a stick from the fire, brandishing it like a weapon. What is it, a dingo? Toby's heart pounded in his chest, his grip tightening on his pocket knife. But before any of them could act, a figure emerged from the darkness. It wasn't a dingo, it was a man. The stranger stepped into the light of the fire, his face weathered and worn, his clothes ragged. He looked like he'd been wandering the bush for weeks. His eyes were wild, but he held up his hands in a gesture of peace. "Don't be scared," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "I'm not here to hurt you." The boys stared at him, frozen in place. Jamie was the first to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you?" The man crouched by the fire, warming his hands. "Name's Jack. Been out here a long time, longer than I cared to remember." Ben, still clutching his makeshift weapon, eyed the man warily. "What are you doing out here?" Jack's eyes flickered toward the horizon, where the first light of dawn was beginning to break. "Same as you, I reckon, trying to find my way home." He told them a story. a story that chilled the boys to the bone. Jack had been lost in the bush for years, wandering aimlessly, surviving off the land, but always searching for something, or someone. "There's something out here," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Something that keeps you lost. You think you're close, but then it pulls you back, always pulls you back." The boys listened in stunned silence, unsure whether to believe him or not. But there was something in his eyes, something haunted, that made them shiver. Jamie spoke up, his voice steady but filled with doubt. "We just need to find our way back to town. We'll be fine." Jack shook his head, a sad smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Maybe, but it's not as easy as you think." Morning came, and the boys packed up their makeshift camp. Jack offered to guide them, and though they were hesitant, they had little choice. They followed him through the bush, the sun climbing higher in the sky, the heat intensifying with each passing hour. But as the day wore on, Jamie began to notice something unsettling. No matter how far they walked, no matter which direction they turned, the landscape never seemed to change. It was as if they were walking in circles. Jack's words from the night before echoed in his mind. "Something keeps you lost." By midday the boys were exhausted, their throats dry and their legs aching. Toby stumbled, falling to the ground in exhaustion. I can't go any further." Ben helped him to his feet, but even he was starting to falter. "We need water," he croaked. "We need to find the creek," but there was no creek, no town. Just endless scrub and the oppressive heat of the outback. Jack stopped suddenly, turning to face them, his eyes dark with a strange intensity. "You're not going to find it," he said softly. "Not unless you listen." Jamie stared at him, confusion and frustration building. Listen to what? Jack pointed to the horizon, where the sun was beginning its slow descent once more, to the land, to the bush. "It knows where you are. It always knows. You've just got to listen." The boys exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to do. But they were desperate, and with no other options, they did as Jack said. They stopped. They listened. And then, faint but unmistakable, they heard it, the sound of running water. The boys ran, Jack trailing behind them, and soon they found it, a small, trickling creek hidden behind a thicket of trees. They collapsed by the water's edge, drinking deeply, their relief palpable. Jack watched them from a distance, a faint smile on his lips. "Sometimes," he said, "you've got to let the bush show you the way." And with that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the scrub as mysteriously as he had appeared. The boys never saw him again. They made it back to town the next day, tired, hungry, and sunburnt, but alive. Their parents were frantic with worry, but the boys could hardly explain what had happened. How could they? The Outback had tested them, shown them the thin line between being lost and being found. And though they would never forget the terror of those nights in the bush, they had learned something valuable. Sometimes, when you're lost, you just need to stop, listen, and let the land guide you home. The sun hung low over the shimmering waters of the Coral Sea as 5 friends, Tom, Jack, Liam, Noah, and Ethan, set sail from Airlie Beach in Queensland, Australia. They planned a week-long sailing adventure through the Whitsunday Islands. Their itinerary included exploring the pristine sands of Whitehaven Beach, snorkeling near the vibrant corals of Hook Island, and gazing at the southern stars. On the 3rd day, as they navigated the azure waters near Hamilton Island, the weather began to change. Dark clouds gathered on the horizon, and the wind picked up, whipping the sea into a frenzy. The radio crackled with a severe storm warning. Before they could reach a safe harbor, the tempest was upon them. Waves towered over their modest sailboat, tossing it like a toy. Lightning split the sky, and thunder roared as they fought to keep the vessel afloat. A colossal wave crashed over the deck, and with a deafening crack, the mast snapped like a twig. The boat capsized, plunging them into the churning sea. Clinging to debris and to each other, they battled the relentless waves until exhaustion overcame them. Darkness enveloped them as they lost consciousness. Tom awoke to the gentle lapping of waves against his feet. Disoriented, he blinked against the harsh sunlight. He lay on a sandy beach, with the wreckage of their boat scattered along the shore. One by one the others stirred, coughing up seawater and groaning in pain. "Is everyone okay?" Jack called out, his voice hoarse. "I think so," Liam replied, inspecting a gash on his arm. They assessed their injuries, bruises, cuts, and sore muscles, but miraculously, they were all alive. The island was unfamiliar and not marked on any of their maps. Towering palm trees swayed above them, and dense jungle stretched inland. "Where are we?" Ethan wondered aloud. Noah shaded his eyes, scanning the coastline. "I think we're somewhere east of the main Whitsunday Islands, but I've never heard of any land out here." Let's gather what we can from the wreckage, Tom suggested. We need shelter, food, and fresh water. They salvaged what they could. A couple of waterlogged backpacks, a first aid kit, a flare gun with 2 flares, and a utility knife. With no means of communication, their phones and radio ruined by seawater, they were truly stranded. As the sun climbed higher, they ventured into the jungle, following a faint animal trail. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and blooming flowers. Strange bird calls echoed through the canopy, and the rustle of unseen creatures put them on edge. After an hour of trekking, they stumbled upon a freshwater stream. They drank greedily, filling their bottles. Nearby, fruit trees offered a small bounty: bananas, mangoes, and coconuts. This will keep us going for a while, Liam said, relief evident in his voice. They decided to set up a makeshift camp near the stream. Using fallen branches and palm fronds, they constructed a shelter to protect them from the elements. As night fell, the jungle came alive with sounds. Insects chirped and nocturnal animals stirred. The stars above were a glittering tapestry unmarred by city lights. Sitting around a small fire, they discussed their predicament. Tomorrow we need to find higher ground, Tom said. Maybe we can spot a passing ship or plane. And keep an eye out for any signs of people, Jack added. We can't be the first to land here. The next morning, they set out at dawn. The trek was arduous, the terrain becoming steeper as they moved inland. Vines and underbrush hindered their progress, and the humid heat sapped their energy. After several hours, they reached a rocky outcrop that offered a panoramic view of the island. To their dismay, they saw only endless jungle and beyond it the vast ocean stretching to the horizon. There's nothing out here, Noah said, his voice tinged with despair. Wait, Ethan pointed toward the northern end of the island. What's that? In the distance, a jagged structure jutted above the treetops. A mountain, or perhaps a dormant volcano. Maybe from up there we can get a signal, or at least a better view, Tom suggested. They agreed to make their way toward the peak, hoping it would provide the answers they sought. The journey took 2 days. Along the way they encountered wildlife that was both wondrous and alarming. Colorful parrots and exotic butterflies flitted among the trees, while distant animal calls kept them vigilant. At one point they stumbled upon a clearing filled with ancient-looking stone carvings, totem-like figures adorned with unfamiliar symbols. These must be Aboriginal artifacts, Liam speculated, but I've never seen anything like them. Maybe this island was sacred ground, Jack mused. They pressed on, the carvings adding a layer of mystery to their quest. Reaching the base of the mountain, they found a narrow path winding upward. The ascent was treacherous, with loose rocks and sheer drops threatening their every step as they climbed. The weather began to change. Dark clouds rolled in, and a chill wind swept across the slopes. We need to hurry, Tom urged. Finally, they reached the summit. The view was breathtaking, a 360-degree panorama of the island and the surrounding sea, but their hearts sank when they saw no signs of civilization or passing ships. Now what? Noah asked, frustration evident. Wait, look over there, Ethan exclaimed, pointing eastward. In the distance, a faint plume of smoke rose above the trees. Could be a signal fire, Jack suggested, or another survivor. Tom said, either way, we need to check it out. Descending the mountain proved more perilous than the ascent. Rain began to fall, turning the path into a slick, muddy slide. At one point, Liam lost his footing, tumbling down a slope and twisting his ankle. Are you okay? Noah asked, helping him up. I'll manage. Liam winced. We can't stop now. They fashioned a makeshift crutch from a sturdy branch and continued toward the smoke. As night fell, they reached a dense section of the jungle. The canopy above blocked out the moonlight, and the underbrush was thick with thorny plants. Stay close, Tom whispered. We don't know what's out here. Suddenly a rustling sound emerged from the darkness. They froze, hearts pounding. A pair of glowing eyes stared back at them from the shadows. What's that? Ethan whispered. Before they could react, a wild boar charged from the underbrush, tusks gleaming. The men scattered, dodging the beast as it barreled through. Climb the trees, Jack shouted. They scrambled up the nearest trees, clinging to the branches as the boar circled below, grunting angrily. After what felt like hours, the animal lost interest and disappeared into the jungle, breathing heavily. They climbed down. Let's keep moving, Tom urged. We need to reach that smoke. By dawn, they emerged from the jungle into a clearing by the coast. The source of the smoke was a small campfire on the beach, but no one was around. Hello, Jack called out. No response. They approached cautiously. The camp looked recently abandoned. Footprints in the sand, a fishing net, and a simple shelter made of driftwood. Someone was definitely here, Noah said. Maybe they're out fishing, Ethan suggested. Wait, Liam said, picking up an object from the sand. It was a weathered compass. The glass cracked, looks old. Tom observed just then. A voice called out from behind them. Who are you? They turned to see an elderly man emerging from the trees, a spear in hand. His clothes were tattered, and his skin was deeply tanned by the sun. We're shipwrecked, Tom explained. Our boat sank in a storm. We've been trying to find help. The man's stern expression softened. I haven't seen anyone else here in years. How long have you been here? Jack asked. He sighed, lost count after 10, named Samuel. They exchanged stories, learning that Samuel was a fisherman from Cairns who had been stranded after his boat was damaged in a cyclone. I've tried signaling for help, but this island is off the main shipping routes, Samuel explained. Rescue isn't coming. There must be a way, Tom insisted. Maybe if we work together we can build a raft or repair a boat. Samuel shook his head. I've searched the entire island. Not enough materials for a seaworthy vessel. Then we'll find another way, Ethan said determinedly. Over the next few days, the group pooled their resources and knowledge. They improved their shelter, gathered food, and planned their next move. One evening, as they sat around the fire, Samuel shared a legend he'd heard from Aboriginal elders before he was stranded. They spoke of a hidden cave on this island, he began, a place where the sea enters the land. Inside, there's supposed to be an old ceremonial site, perhaps even ancient artifacts. How does that help us? Noah asked. According to the legend, the cave also holds a secret, a way to signal the spirits of the sea, Samuel said with a hint of a smile. You think we can use it to call for help? Tom inquired. It's worth a try, Samuel replied. At this point, it's better than waiting around. Guided by Samuel, they trekked along the coastline to the cave's supposed location. The entrance was hidden behind a waterfall that cascaded into a secluded lagoon. They navigated the slippery rocks, stepping into the cool darkness of the cave. The walls were adorned with ancient paintings, handprints, animal figures, and celestial patterns. In the depths of the cave, they found a large chamber illuminated by a shaft of sunlight from an opening above. In the center stood a stone altar. This is incredible, Liam whispered, awestruck. Look at this, Jack said, pointing to a series of symbols that resembled waves and stars. Could be a map, Ethan suggested. As they examined the carvings, a low humming sound filled the chamber. The ground trembled slightly. What's happening? Noah exclaimed. A beam of sunlight hit the altar directly, reflecting off a crystal embedded in the stone. The light refracted, casting shimmering patterns on the walls. Outside, the sky began to change. Unbeknownst to them, the light from the cave was projecting a brilliant beacon into the sky, a phenomenon visible for miles. Miles away, a Royal Australian Navy patrol vessel was conducting routine exercises. On the bridge, the radar operator noticed something unusual. Captain, I'm picking up a strange light to the west. The captain raised his binoculars, spotting the faint but distinct. That's not a natural occurrence, he said, set a course to investigate. Back on the island, the group emerged from the cave, unaware of the signal they'd activated. They returned to camp, spirits lifted by the discovery, but unsure if it would lead to rescue. The next morning, as they prepared to forage for food, the sound of a distant horn echoed across the water. Did you hear that? Ethan asked, eyes wide. They ran to the beach, scanning the horizon. In the distance, a ship was approaching, its hull cutting through the waves with purpose. It's a Navy vessel, Tom shouted, waving his arms. They grabbed the flare gun and fired a flare into the sky. The bright red streak arced upward, leaving a trail of smoke. Minutes later, a smaller boat was deployed from the ship, speeding toward the shore. As the rescue team landed, the men felt a surge of relief, unlike any they'd ever known. Are you all okay? A naval officer asked. We are now, Tom replied, gratitude evident in his eyes. Aboard the naval ship, they recounted their ordeal. The captain explained how they spotted the unusual light signal. Must have been some kind of reflection or natural phenomenon, he mused. Or maybe something more, Samuel said with a knowing smile. They were taken to Cairns, where medical teams attended to their injuries and dehydration. News of their survival spread quickly, and they were hailed as heroes. Before parting ways, the 5 friends and Samuel promised to stay in touch. We should write a book about this, Liam suggested. Who'd believe it? Jack laughed. I think people need a bit of wonder in their lives, Noah said thoughtfully. As they stood on the bustling docks of Cairns, watching the ships come and go, Tom reflected on their journey. We may have been lost, he said, but we found something extraordinary. about the world and ourselves. Here's to new adventures, Ethan said, raising an imaginary glass. They all nodded, the bond between them stronger than ever. Months later, the tale of their survival became a sensation. The mysterious island was investigated by scientists and historians, eager to uncover its secrets. Yet, the cave's light phenomenon remained unexplained, adding to the legend. For the five friends, life returned to normal, but the memories of their time on the island stayed with them, a reminder of resilience, friendship, and the mysteries that still exist in the world. And somewhere, on that uncharted island in the Coral Sea, the ancient cave awaited, holding its secrets close, a beacon for those willing to seek the unknown. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more stories.